All right. First item on our agenda is a consent agenda to approve the minutes of the regular school committee meeting of January 10th. I'll entertain a motion.
We're gonna skip that.
Okay.
Meeting, because we'll have two sets at the next time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Didn't have enough time to go.
Oh, that's fine. I'm sorry, I didn't have anything. This is a time for public comments. Would someone like to address the committee at this time? Hi.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Maria Santos, and I live at Untitled Chapter. I wanted to just take a minute to, first of all, on behalf of all the organizations we belong to as parents, offer our sincere condolences to the Kathy Faye's family, and especially to the community of Center School. It was really, truly amazing to me how that community came together to support Kathy's family, and also the students at Center School who really felt her loss. And I'd like to really give kudos to the guidance department, because I realize that some folks in guidance made themselves available to fill in for teachers at Center who had been Kathy's friends and her family for many years, and allow these teachers to attend the funeral. So I really would like to just congratulate them and you as a community for coming together and doing this. It was a sad moment, but what an incredible thing to witness and to see and to be a part of. And so thank you to all of you, and especially the guidance department. The second thing I'd like to do is that I think we don't usually offer comments after, and I think tonight you're going to hear some presentations from Center School, a great community known to me well. And my children have participated in science fair all throughout the years that they have been at Center School. And then when they came to McCarthy, science fair was not a known thing, a known entity. And I just want to extend my sincere thanks to Teresa Evans, who started it at Center School and then brought it to McCarthy. And I think this year, for the first time, all schools will have a science fair. And our science fair in our community is not a competitive thing for the most part. It's just students really coming and doing a project and doing it because they want to do it and they want to learn something. So I just want to extend out a big thank you to her, to everybody in PTOs who have participated along the way in making science fair a part of what goes on in Chelmsford, and to say, yay, great. We knew the science standards were there even before they came along, and we had to institute them. It's great to see a science coordinator on board. Thank you for making that a possibility. And once again, congratulations to everyone who came together for what happened at Center this past week. Thank you.
I'd just like to add to your comments, as you get older, like some of us, you become aware how supportive people in education are even after they're out of the schools. You know, we have situations with some people in my age group where people are very ill, one thing or another, and the people who are supportive of the people that they worked with. So I'm glad you brought that up, and it's one of the characteristics of this town, no question about it. Would anyone else like to address the committee at this time? Yes.
Hi, I'm Diana Full-Reader, principal at Center, and I just wanted to follow up with a thank you as well. People have been unbelievably supportive of our school during this incredibly difficult time. The whole district contributed to come and support all staff members who wanted to attend the services, and it was really overwhelming to go. And I think we had almost 40 people there from the district and from the school, and I know that meant a lot to the family. We had staff members who stayed back and helped cover. We had principals from the other schools. The union provided food for us that morning, and the day we came back to school after she passed away. So, and all the expressions of sympathy and support have just really helped us. get through for the kids and the families and the staff. So we appreciate everyone's continued thoughts, 'cause it's gonna be a long journey for us, but being new to the district, I really got a sense of the kind of district this is, and thankful to be here, because people really showed their true colors in supporting us, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you. I'd just like to cite one other example, because not only, it was mentioned before, Mrs. Santos, but the kids. We had a situation a number of years ago where a faculty member passed away in the Emerson wing of the high school, which obviously, was a difficult situation. The students were moved out of that wing to the cafeteria and went about having conversation, doing work for a fairly extended period of time while this crisis situation was dealt with. So I just want to give the kids the credit, and I'm sure, it was referred to with these younger students, but the kids really rise to the occasion also when they know things are serious. And that was unbelievable. Anybody that was there, it was just great, the way they handled it. Anyone else like to address the committee at this time? All right. Student input.
All right, hello. So some updates from last time. The wrestling team won their last invitational and has been doing very well and living up to their title of state champs from last year. The 18th through 20th this weekend is the children's play at the CHS PAC, which was written and directed by seniors. On the 24th is the CHS After School Ensemble concert at 7 p.m. And on the 25th, our mid-year exams start.
So the Any Voices Festival is going to be the 26th, and on the 27th, they're going to have the top 3 groups that score perform then. And on January 31st, they're going to have Engineering Day at the high school. So it's going to be all blocks, and it starts at 7:19. So you have 3 sections, and one of them is the engineering and the computer science teachers. And then there's college representatives from UML and WPI. And then you have corporate sponsors from places like iRobot and Hitchcock Civil Engineering. And so they're just trying to raise awareness about STEM jobs and bringing it into the high school.
Mr. Simone, would you like to speak?
You all know Terry, President of the Association?
Yes.
Hello all. Good evening. I have good news. In fact, that's all I ever have. Just give me a minute to get my crib sheets together here. Good evening. The Chelmsford High School Alumni Association proudly announces its 28th annual Hall of Fame induction. The ceremony will take place on the evening of the 24th of March, 2018, at the UMass Lowell Inn and Conference Center in Lowell. The program will include a social, 5:45 p.m., dinner at 6:30, and the induction at 7. Those being inducted are as follows: Josh Blagg, class of 1991. Carolyn Clancy, class of 1978. Valerie Diggs, librarian. John Kraus, class of 1986. Charles Mickle, class of 1983. Andy Pasquale, teacher. John Prisabali, class of 1975. Alexander Turner, class of 2001. And Michael Woodlock, class of 1990. Outstanding, outstanding, outstanding. Just to give you some idea, just some bullets of these folks. Josh Black, class of 1991 graduate, 4-time Sun All-Star, and 1991 Swimmer of the Year. Multiple times Globe and Herald All-Scholastic recognition. He established a water polo team. Record-breaking college swimmer, polo team player. Coach of multiple winning school and club swim teams, Globe Coach of the Year. Highly respected teacher, and presently the dean of Hawthorne House in Chelmsford at the high school. Carolyn Clancy, class of 1978 graduate. National and French Honor Societies while she was in high school. Standout field hockey player, 2-time MVP. Merrimack Valley All-League team and 1977 All-State team. Went on to Assumption College where she played the College Athletic Hall of Fame in field hockey. Magna cum laude graduate of Assumption. Then her MBA at Babson. She's an executive at Fidelity Investments. Leads women's networking groups. Works with Big Sister Association and other charities. A generous, Scholarship benefactor. Valerie Diggs, retired CHS librarian, established the Learning Commons in 2008, which has become a national and international model for excellent educational facilities of this type. She co-chaired the CHS accreditation back in those days, the NESCAC accreditation process. Continues as design consultant and adjunct college professor. Former president of Mass Media Library Association, lifetime award winner of the Massachusetts Library Association. New England School Library Association Hall of Fame. J.R. Krause, John Krause, he's known as J.R., class of '86 graduate, award-winning CHS artist, Globe Competition and Ravello Scholarship, muralist at CHS, he's done murals there, well-rounded, played both football and volleyball, summer art program, Boston Fine Arts and Rhode Island School Design, Illustration, and Children's Books. Simpsons staff since 1991, multiple Emmys, other TV shows as well. He's written children's books with his wife, the Poco Loco series. They're up in the library, at our library. Created a database of CHS art graduates. Volunteers to speak to kids at his local library out in California about art. Charlie Mickle, class of '83 graduate, multiple sport student athlete, MVC and Sun basketball all-star, member of the math team. He was the class vice president. He was a walk-on basketball player at Boston College. Rare. He got a Division I basketball scholarship without being recruited. He's a local business owner, mortgage banking and Brickhouse Center Sports Grill. Holds standards high as longtime CHS varsity basketball coach. Develops potential of youth under his direction. Kind, generous benefactor to many town activities. Charlie's just one super graduate. Andy Pasquale, 41-year math teacher at CHS. Glowing description of his abilities from colleagues and students alike. 3-time yearbook dedication. He was the graduation speaker of the class of 1993. Outstanding distinguished teacher, White House Commission on Presidential Scholars, Harvard Club Teacher Award, created own AP Calculus textbook. I think he was a valedictorian at BC when he graduated from BC. I know he's a top scholar. One of the finest. John Prisomali, class of '75 graduate, gold medal scholar, top 5 of his class. CHS and town chess teams. Graduated from University of Vermont, summa cum laude, outstanding biomedical research award in the United States Navy, Uniformed Services, University of Health Sciences, 30-plus career as a decorated naval surgeon, retired as a captain of the Navy. Field surgeon in Iraq. He set up facilities for emergency damage control surgery. You all saw the MASH programs. Well, it's the same thing. He developed those in Iraq. Same kind of thing, okay? Working out of a tent, doing surgical work. Alex Turner, class of 2001 graduate. CHS Design Team Award for Innovation leading to winning seasons. University of Mass Award in Engineering competition while at CHS. Magna cum laude, BS graduate, RPI. He was in the Air Force ROTC. Many leadership positions. He played hockey there. Air Force pilot with over 1,700 hours flying time, including 260 combat hours. Just completed a 2-year assignment with the Thunderbirds demonstration team. Solo pilot. Many awards for both skill and leadership. Units outreach and community touched many lives. In order to make a Thunderbird, you had to be some pilot. Let me tell you, I know. Michael Woodlock, class of 1990 graduate. Active in DECA, both in leadership and as a model in annual show. Volunteered at Sunny Acres. Honor student on the '87 Super Bowl football team. An all-star football player at Assumption. Economic Honor Society. Mexico Mission and Soup Kitchen volunteer. Outstanding teacher, coach, club, and class advisor. He was a principal at Tingsboro High School for many years, and now, he's the principal of Groton Dunstable Regional High School. He's a worship leader of church and a youth mission facilitator. Every year we induct 9 outstanding graduates and staff. This just follows along with it. They keep coming. We have one heck of a high school, and we produce some outstanding graduates, and we have an outstanding staff at the high school. I want you all to know that. Questions? Oh, sorry, thank you. The most important part. For information relative to the purchase of tickets for the induction ceremony, please call Terry, 978-251-3788, or myself, 978-256-3300.
It's the only reason we were here was to sell tickets.
I didn't bring any with me, well, anyway. But I know you'll all be there, okay? And we've changed venues this year, okay? Instead of New Hampshire, we're coming back to Lowell, okay? For a lot of reasons, which I'm not going to discuss today.
And also, so it won't be a shock, we raised the prices to $60.
Right, we had to.
We were losing money.
While you're here, you want to tell people how they can nominate somebody?
There is, the application for nomination is available on the website at chsalumni.org. We also have a committee that once they start the process, the committee would be happy to work with them and help them through the nominating process, because it can be a little daunting to look at that application and figure out how you're going to actually fill it out. So we've put a committee together to help people do that. So again, chsalumni.org, nomination papers are there.
As an aside, 3 of you folks here on the school board are Hall of Fame members. Sal, Al, and Dennis. No questions. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good news.
Have a good evening.
Yeah, I have one bit of good news. So our in-house preschool program, the Lion's Den, which is staffed by Sandy Brody, who's the lead preschool teacher, and then we have Karen Sheehan, who's the assistant preschool teacher. They were named the best of at preschools in Chelmsford. So Lowell Sun puts out a best of for businesses in the local area, and the Lion's Den was part of that. What's really nice about this program, if you don't know a lot about it, it's housed at our high school, and students that take the early childhood class with Mrs. Murphy are able to then go in and be aides in that classroom. So our students are working hand in hand with our staff, our students, and learning at the same time. So if you want to be part of the best of, the registration's actually happening right now, so you can contact Community Ed and you can register your children.
Very good. I'd like to take this opportunity to share an email that I received from Heather Lindstead today. On Thursday night at the high school from 6 to 7:30 in the Learning Commons, there's going to be the first Alumni Association Share Night. There'll be over 25 notable Chelmsford High School alumni there to speak with high school students about their college decision and career. Additionally, we'll have young CHS alumni who are still in college, and they'll be available to speak about their current experience and why they chose the college or university that they did. The goal is for Chelmsford High School students and their parents to speak with the alumni to get more insight on pursuing their future goals. Including in the evening will be keynote speakers. Here's the lineup. At 6 o'clock, Peter Reynolds, class of 78, Fable Vision, and children's book author. At 6:15, Bob Brown, class of 81, Waveguide, chief operating officer. 6:30, Angelique Eliopoulos, class of 98, lawyer. 6:45, Russell Lindstead, class of 91, federal agent, law enforcement. At 7 o'clock, Sal Lapoli, class of 84, entrepreneur, real estate person, pizza person. And Karen Gurian at 7:15, who's been a sports writer with the Boston Herald, should talk about that, or journalism. So this is a first. That's a great lineup of people, and there'll be a whole host of, I think there are maybe 50 other people that are going to be there to be able to talk about where they went to school or the career path that they went out on. So hopefully, again, hope you picked up from that it's not just for kids, it's for their parents. If parents have questions about specific schools or career paths. So we're all excited about it, and hopefully we'll get a good turnout for that. All right, new business. Where do we want to?
Sure. What we're gonna do is actually skip item number 1 right now, which was the presentation from Center School and the Science Department. They're gonna come a little closer to 6:30. So once all the kids come and we're ready for the presentation, we'll go back to item number 1. So I'd recommend just moving to item number 2 on the agenda, which is public input pertaining to the FY19 budget process, which is going to be upcoming. We had allowed an opportunity at the last school committee meeting, doing a similar this school committee meeting. If there were any people in attendance that wanted to make any comments or provide any additional information that we should take into consideration for the fiscal 19 budget process, this would be the time to come forward and do that. And then, just so you know, we mentioned previously at the meeting in February, the first meeting in February, is when we'll do a budget presentation and really kind of start our budget process. So that's about 3 weeks away. But wanted to provide an opportunity for anyone this evening, if they wanted to come and say anything regarding the fiscal 19 budget process or priorities, this would be the time to do so.
I would also like to note that we have received communication from people in the community about budget concerns. People weren't able to be here last time and have contacted us. The last one was about library services and so forth. So people can get in touch with us without being here also.
And what I figured I would do to that effect, because we have received a few emails, is that first meeting when we do the presentation on the budget, because people weren't able to come, but they spent the time sending us letters or emails of support for different issues. I would just touch base on the different areas that they sent us emails on, just so that it can be part of the record as we're starting our work on the budget. All right, so we'll now move on to item number 3 on the budget, which was a recommendation to an amendment to the Chelmsford High School Student Handbook. So I'd invite Steve and the high school staff who are interested to come forward. The high school is recommending a change to the current handbook pertaining to vaping. And I'll allow Steve and staff to explain this, to touch upon what the handbook currently covers, to talk about the recommendation, the change, if approved by the school committee, how that'd be communicated, and I will turn it over to you.
Sure, thank you. Thanks for having us. So currently we have, just like every other high school in Massachusetts, we're having a vaping issue in school where a lot of kids are vaping, and there's 2 problems with that. One is that there are a lot of dangers in that, regardless of what's in it, whether it's pot in the vaping or it's just nicotine or even flavored. The flavoring, they found out that many popcorn companies were using that flavoring for their product, but it was also causing popcorn lung for the people who were working in there, which means it was almost like your cells in your lungs were popping and opening and not repairable. But that's the new thing the kids are doing. They do it in many different forms and different ways, and it's happening. You don't smell it like a cigarette or like pot. Doesn't have that distinct smell. Sometimes it's kind of a vanilla smell or whatever it is, lavender. And when you smell that coming out of a bathroom, you know there's an issue. And so we're looking at vaping in terms of our handbook. Currently, our handbook has vaping consequences are detentions, where most area schools have now moved to suspensions for that because of the dangerousness of it. And you have to be 21 years or older anyhow to use it. So what we're looking to do is to go in line with the other area schools. The MIAA has already adjusted their handbook to, if you get caught vaping, regardless if it has pot in it or if it's nicotine or flavored, you lose 25% of your season, because that's how serious they view this. So we're looking to treat vaping just like we would treat alcohol in drugs and paraphernalia. And so we're taking it out of section 9.0, which talks about smoking and tobacco, and we moved it into 2.6, which is drug, alcohol, and vaping paraphernalia. And because the vaping paraphernalia are quite wide, and there's so many different instruments and implements you can use for that, we put a whole bunch of lists in there, including e-cigarettes, jewels, chargers, electronic cigarette cartridges, chemicals, the drips, the juice, etc. So it's all the stuff that's coming into the building. Some of it looks exactly like a pen, and you can take it apart and you can charge it into your USB port of your computer, and it looks like you have a thumb drive, and it's really you're charging up your vape. So what we want to do, as I said here, is move that, which can treat vaping just like we would alcohol and drugs, and move away from the detentions and move to a suspensions for kids who are doing that. And with that, we also need education. So we're going to do a couple of things in that. When we talk, we're going to have house meetings, if this gets approved, with every class and every house to talk about the dangers of it, the consequences, etc. It's also moved into our health classes to talk about vaping in our health classes and the dangers. And I have a letter and a series of things that go out to parents after this to talk about with pictures to show what to look for, what it is, what's about, what's in it, etc. that I've gathered on my own as well as from our peers. I have a critical friends group of principals in the area, about 15 of us, and this is something that we've all been working on. So what we move forward here is once again taking vaping out of 9.0, which is smoking and tobacco, and moving into section 2.6, page 60 in the handbook that talks about drugs, alcohol, and vaping paraphernalia. We really want to educate kids, but at the same time make sure it's not in our buildings and causing distractions.
First of all, Mr. Murray, I think this is an absolute excellent suggestion. Being at the high school as much as I am and around athletes as much as I am, I've watched the athletes not only on the football team, but on other teams. And I think the biggest problem is whenever I have a conversation with these young men and certainly some of these young women about what vaping does, they have no idea about the popcorn lungs. So when I talk about it, their eyes get really wide. So when you talk about education, that is a really big deal of not only the what it does to you long term, but what it does to you immediately. So if you could really emphasize, almost make these kids understand in a shock way, because when you tell these kids what vaping does, every one of them that I've spoken to, they put it down. But up until that point, they have no idea about popcorn lung. So it's a big deal, sir. So if you could just continually get that education out, almost as I don't want to say scared, but make them understand how bad it is, I guarantee you'll see a change. So I commend you and the entire system for doing something like this. That's a great job. Thank you, Principal Murray.
A lot of work been on the deans. They really moved forward on this, and I think also because, exactly what you're saying, because it doesn't have that caustic taste or feeling from you have a cigarette, a lot of kids assume that it's not harmful, that it's a safer, and it just isn't and hasn't been.
You know, they say the same thing. It's not smoking, I'm just vaping.
It's just vaping.
They don't understand. It's one and the same, so
thank you.
please, this is really important.
And just to reinforce, it's not just a Chelmsford problem. I know we were going to do this presentation last Wednesday, and that morning, where I work, we had a presentation on the same exact subject. And it's just amazing, that these jewels and everything else, they're made to be hidden. I mean, the companies that are making these, are making it easy for kids to hide these things and keep them discreet. And it's scary the kind of things that can be in those.
Put them in Sharpie pens now.
Yeah,
and it's everything.
things that look like USB drives and everything else.
It's hard.
Steve, can you just explain for me, so if this is approved this evening, I know you talked a little bit about the parent education piece that would take place, but how would you actually describe these changes to the handbook? We're in the middle of the school year to parents. How would you relay that to kids and also to parents so that no one is surprised if, a month from now they come in and they're actually suspended instead of just receiving detention for this? How would that outreach
So
happen?
we're going to do two things in concert. So as we have our house meetings with each grade, through each house with the deans and talking about this, we'll also send information home to the parents about what it is and why we're making this change. And then just as we do at the beginning of the year, it's going to be paperwork, but we're going to have another permission slip go home to all parents and students with the student and the parent sign to show that they've read the addendum and the change and that, and we'll collect that. So we'll do it through meetings as well as that form.
Excellent job.
Mr. Murray, I have a question on the paper, the
Yep.
first offense. Where, I just want this to be clear, up to 5-day suspension, is that removal in parentheses, or
Oh,
where does this, how does that work?
That was what used to be, so it says up to a 5-day suspension, and in parentheses, removal of the up to 6 days after school
Oh,
detention.
okay.
That's-
Okay.
It wasn't
I just
detention
wanted to be
before, we're just
clear
taking
of
that part out.
All right, thank you. I'll entertain a motion.
I have a question,
Yeah,
it's
sure.
unrelated to vaping.
Oh, sure.
If you can go back into your, I tried to research this, I wouldn't bother you if I could get the answer. Can you tell me when the N grade was made part of the handbook? Can't find it anywhere online.
That's a great question. The end grade has been probably, it was well before I came, but has never really been, implemented or used. And attendance has been an issue in terms of people coming in late, very late, and then also, or not coming at all. And so the end grade, we decided this year, hey, it's in our handbook, let's use it as a way for getting kids, make sure attendance. And actually, we've seen a great improvement in the number of kids tardies has dropped dramatically in the first quarter. We haven't seen the second quarter yet. When we talked about the end grade, kids are getting to school mostly on time, or more kids are on time, which before it wasn't. It was more when breakfast was over,
Yeah.
they could come in. So that's good, that's good.
If you could just find a date where that.
Yeah, we will,
I can only go back so far online.
good point, I'll go back and look.
So you
but
might have some, physical handbooks laying around somewhere?
Sure.
Thank you.
No problem.
I have all the handbooks. I found it as far back as 2004.
2004.
Oh, wow.
I can't go that far back.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion, and see if you could support me, Mr. Superintendent, on this, but I make a motion that we remove vaping from section 9.0 and move it to the student handbook in section 2.6 with the violations that come with it and the penalties that come with it.
Second?
Any further discussion or question? Hearing none. All in favor, aye.
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 Anyone abstain or a negative vote? Unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda this evening, item 4. This is, we're going to have Steve and company stay. This is a recommendation to amend the Chelmsford High School graduation requirements. So part of this is an outreach of the coordinated program review, which we reported on at the last school committee meeting. One of this pertains to health and phys ed. Maybe I'll let you kind of walk it through, 'cause I don't want to steal your whole presentation. So I'll let you do that, and then we can answer any questions. But again, this particular amendment request will affect Chelmsford High School graduations going forward.
Sure, I'll give a little beginning, and then I'll turn it over for specifics to Katie and Tom. So the coordinated program review in the spring of 2017, they come up with some directives, so to say, in terms of things we need to change or address to come in line with what the state asked. And one of the things they said is that we need to have physical education courses each year. And so where some kids would have a health and physical education freshman year, we now have to spread that out each year and give kids the opportunity to have that 9, 10, 11, and 12. And maybe I'll turn over to Katie to talk about what that's going to look like, what it was before, and then how it's going to change now.
Sure. So a couple of changes. The credits are not going to necessarily change. So physical education, right now students have to take 10 credits of physical education one semester in their freshman year, one semester in their sophomore year. For health education, same 10 credits, one in their freshman year, and then the other one, as you may remember, last year we came and you approved the junior-senior course. So what we're going to propose for changing is the sequencing of our courses. So instead of there being 2 courses for freshmen, take one of those courses out and put it into sophomore year, because right now we don't have any health education or physical education in our sophomore class, and then move that freshman PE class to junior year. So what it would look like is the freshman and sophomore PE class would move from sophomore to junior year. And then the health education courses would move, one would stay freshman year, and the other one would move to the student's senior year. So instead of getting the option of taking it junior or senior year, they would be taking it in their senior year. And because these changes are for all 4 years, and the biggest impact being freshman year, we figured it would be best if the current 8th graders started with this change in sequencing, because it would be too difficult to change right now because the students are already going by the old graduation requirements.
So it'll be health freshman year, PE sophomore and junior year, and then health again senior year. And then with that, we're trying to give some flexibility with our graduation requirements. So the way it currently stands is that you have to get fine performing arts 10 credits and practical arts 5 credits in order to graduate. And then in that whole category, you need a total of 30 credits. That's pretty restricting and tight. So what we did is we left the fine and performing arts credits at 10, practical at 5, and we took that extra 15 and moved it to other courses and electives. So where other courses and electives, you needed 30 other courses and electives to graduate, now we bumped back to 45, so it gives kids opportunities to take other classes they might have been blocked out of before, because now we've had to spread this out 4 years. So it'll give kids who might have been blocked from an AP course or a certain class they were really inspired by, now they can take it by moving that out of practical arts 15 credits and moving it to kind of the free electives. It gives kids more wiggle room and play, and I think that's a nice adjustment given that we have to address this directive from the state. We can adjust both at the same time. So it's the sequencing and at the same time, putting credits, elective credits at a different location to give more flexibility.
Give me some examples, please, of practical arts.
Wanna give some-
I wish I brought my program of studies.
A lot of business classes.
There's a lot of business
Business classes,
classes, there's the construction-based classes, there's computer classes,
Exploring early childhood classes are practical arts.
yeah.
So those students who are involved in fine arts activities outside of school, is there any way they could get credit for that? If they're in the band or the chorus, they're fine arts, get credit for it so they could open up their schedule to take even more electives?
So you asking, so if someone takes a band class during the day?
No, if they're
No.
participating in band,
Oh.
you know, as an extracurricular activity, is there any way they could get credit? I mean, they spend hours and hours in practice for these things.
Get credits for fine arts?
Yes.
Fine arts.
I mean, they're involved in a fine arts
We've
activity.
discussed this for a long time. That opens up, then all the sports
Athletics,
kids would not
yeah.
have to do all those
Why do they have to do phys ed?
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's the same, it's the
Hey,
same.
thing.
If
It'll
I
be a-
played sports, why do I have to do phys ed?
It'd be a really slippery slope. I mean, I understand, people brought that up before,
Yeah,
but you open
that's-
that up and it becomes, a really, once
Interesting
that
point,
gate's
though.
open, everything's out. It's tough.
Technically, if I do understand the question correctly, if they're doing a performing art like band, they are fulfilling the requirements, and that's their choice, that's their option. So they're electing to do band, whereas another student may elect to do a gym elective, and another student may elect to do a computer pathway. So I guess that's another piece to consider as well.
And talking to Christy Whittlesey, I think going back to what you're saying, now that where the freshman year, kids have to take currently a health class and a PE class, but that's now being separated, she's actually very excited because that's gonna give opportunities for kids freshman year to take one of these other practical arts or other electives they want, where before they couldn't because they were pretty much locked in
Right.
to a schedule. This gives them a little more wiggle room now.
Are
They-
these semester courses, the health and the PE?
Yes.
So they open up the other semester?
Exactly.
Correct.
It opens up the other one so people can take that, where before she said they couldn't, because freshmen didn't have a lot of choices freshmen, and when you definitely block it with health and PE at the same time, it restricts. So this just should address some of that.
Okay, good.
Principal Murray, could you just explain to the people that are watching this on TV, how do these decisions that you guys are making right now, which are pretty substantial decisions that you're making, and very important, because I think what it shows our community is we have an administration at the top and at every school level that is constantly moving these dials to make things better or make things, let's describe it as sharper. So having said that, how do you guys collectively come together and make these decisions?
Well, and I'm not just saying it because he's here, but we have the benefit of Tom. Tom really knows the graduation requirements from our building, other school districts, what are we in line with, what we're not, and then he's able to look at it and say, hey, if we do this, we can have some flexibility here and there. He's got a really good mind for the scheduling aspect. And then we meet with our scheduler too, to go over different scenarios. If we move a class over here, or a requirement to a different grade, what are the implications that's gonna be? So we meet as a group, as our curriculum coordinators all together, and kind of meet this on every other week to kind of go over things such as this. And Tom has some real great eyes and brains on the situation. And he's done a remarkable job with Katie in terms of mapping this out so we can make the decisions that are in line with DESE, at the same time, not impacting kids in a negative way. And that was the creativity of moving those 15 credits out of that 30 practical arts and moving into the free electives, which is helping that. So I think it was all those different eyes looking at it, which is, Dr. Hirsch attends those meetings as well. And it's fortunate to have the group of administrators who can help out and see that from different lenses.
Excellent, thank you, thank you.
I mean, from my perspective, the change in the staggering of health and phys ed was a requirement of the coordinated program review. And I think that sequencing actually is gonna help kids be able to take a little bit more elective programming their freshman year. So I think that's actually a revamp. There's nothing in particular you have to approve along those lines, because we're always taking 10 credits of phys ed and 10 of health. It's just how we're gonna allocate them through the scheduling. But because of that change had to be made to be in compliance, I credit the high school and the coordinator group for looking at the current offerings to try to see where kids could have more flexibility in their scheduling. The number of fine and performing arts credits, the requirement, the 10 is not changing. The practical arts is not changing. It's now just its own line, so it's a little clearer in here, because practical used to be included with fine and performing arts, and there was a little asterisk that said, 5 of these credits have to be in practical arts. But now it's just gonna be its own line item, so it's a little bit cleaner to look at. And really moving, 3 semesters or 15 credits semesterized to the students to be able to have a little bit more flexibility. And if they want to be able to take an extra health course, or if they want to be able to take an extra science course or a math course or a fine arts course, there's nothing prohibiting them from doing that. They're now going to have that option. So I really see it as a way to kind of increase some flexibility in the schedule and be very clear about what the minimums in the different categories are. So I give them a lot of credit for bringing that forward, and I think it's timely as we're getting into the enrollment process and course selection process at the high school for next year. So on this, again, you don't really need to make a motion on the top part, but you'd be making a motion to approve the changes as presented to the Chelmsford High School, what do we call it, graduation requirements.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the changes as presented in the high school graduation requirements.
Correct.
Second.
Any further discussion, any questions? Seeing none, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any negative vote or abstention? None, unanimous.
Great.
Thank you. I know
Thank
you're
you guys
packed in.
very much.
Congratulations.
We
Thank you
appreciate your
for your
time.
time.
Thank you.
That's
Sorry,
hard
I
work.
spoke
Good
so
job,
much.
guys.
You guys ready? Okay. All right, so we'll actually, if you don't mind, we'll go back to the top of the agenda. And this is the spotlight on, I just need 1 second to pull it up on my computer. But invite John and Diana up. Spotlight on the Center Elementary School. And they've got a couple of students with them as well, so they can come up at the same time. And one of the things that we're, again, we've kind of tweaked this from year to year as far as some of our presentations have gone. As you recall, last year, the first meeting of the month, we had schools only come in. The second meeting, we had departments come in. But what we asked them, the schools and the departments to do this year, is try to have a school pair up with a particular department where they're doing some specialized programming in their school and actually present together. So tonight, we have a great opportunity to hear from Center Elementary School. And then also John Morris, our new science coordinator, and how science is being integrated at the school. So I'd love to turn it over to the two of you. I'm going to get your presentation going in a second, and welcome you here.
Hello, I'm Kate Evans from 4S. And I'm Eva Barber from 4C. In science this year, we had a great time learning with the FOSS science kits. One thing we did was light a light bulb with a circuit board. We connected the bulb to wires that were connected to a battery. As we were lighting the bulb, the system also got the motor to run. We could also have the light bulb light and the motor run at the same time, but we also did just one.
I like the FOSS science kit so much because it helps me learn when we get to experiment. For one of our experiments, we got a bag of objects that we had to test to see if they were insulators or conductors.
Also, we went around the classroom with partners, and we tested things like staplers, whiteboard markers, water bottles, and others to see if they were conductors or insulators. We had an open circuit on a circuit board become a closed circuit with the object. We came up with the general rule of this. If the object is metal, it is a conductor. If not metal, it is an insulator.
The FOSS science kit is my favorite, and it even encouraged me to experiment at home. I've learned that if you are lighting 2 bulbs, to make them brighter, use 2 D cells instead of 1.
We both like FOSS. It is very scientific.
We like it because it helps us understand what we are learning in a fun way.
You guys want to wait and we'll talk about the science fair in a few minutes?
Sure.
I think we should just be done.
That was good.
So I think that gets our minds thinking about science. And Mr. Morris has a quick little activator, our own little science experiment that we're going to do with everyone tonight. And then he's going to share a little bit more about the curriculum. Then we're gonna put in a little plug for the science fair and tell you more about what's happening with that.
Do you want pencil?
We heard a little bit of student feedback, and we'll hear a little more, and you guys don't mind staying up and then answering any questions people have?
You need 3 of these.
Okay.
And then we'll answer some
need
questions.
3.
So that's what we're gonna do for our presentation.
So one of the things that we talked about to kind of get things going is to actually bring some of the components to what our kids are using in 3rd and 4th grade right now at our elementary schools. So each of you have a pencil and 3 magnets in front of you. And if we can go to the next slide, I can show the question that our 3rd graders answered, or are currently answering. How can you take some objects that push and pull each other without touching? And what you're gonna do is I want you to take these 3 magnets, take this pencil, and I want you to try and find a way to balance these 3 magnets on the pencil without them touching each other. You might have seen some of this. In other words, you're gonna slide the magnets on. Of course, the science teachers already have it.
I can't play. I'm not allowed to play.
You can't play.
So our 3rd grade students, they'll start off, they'll look at gravity and how that's an attraction force, and then we integrate magnetism, how that can also attract or push away. And seeing 3rd graders do this activity and right away having it balance and being able to talk about it with each other, why it works, how it works, how things attract, how things repel, it's really engaging with them. And then they can take it and they can discuss this with each other. They can put this in their science notebooks, they're recording observations. Sometimes they get a little frustrated trying to make it work.
It's fine.
It's okay.
I'm getting there, I'm getting there.
Now, this is also a situation where you look at the person next to you and the collaboration with kids, the troubleshoot to make it work.
That's what you say, you're not allowed to play.
It's not fair, Dennis.
Some get it before, that's okay.
I can't even get the magnets apart.
Now, for me, last week, I was in center with a 4th grade class, and we were doing an extension activity of what actually makes something magnetic, where students learn about the composition of iron and material for it to be magnetic. And to have so many kids in a 4th grade class say to me, right away, they're taking a pencil, they're taking these 3 magnets, and Mr. Morris, last year, this is what we did. And they're showing me something that they did a year ago, and they can explain it to me how it works. Well, this is balanced. This is balancing how this repulsion is the same as how much it weighs. So that was cool to see, you know, a year later that they still remember it, and they're excited to be hands-on with all the materials.
Did you fail?
God, I gotta go back to.
I didn't want anybody to cheat, so I pulled it apart.
Listen, we're short on materials, we want our materials back.
Yeah. We do want to use this tomorrow, pending the weather, so.
Do you have remediation?
I can offer support, that I can definitely do. So if you want to go on to the next slide.
Sorry, there we go.
So just a little bit of an overview, something that you might have seen over the past year. What we're looking at overall in science, this isn't just at center, but this is across all the elementaries. This year has been a focus more on the physical sciences in grades 1 to 4.
Almost.
In trees and weather in kindergarten. Next year, we already have our kits coming in, where we're looking at more of an earth science component, and our kindergartens will be looking at materials in motion. And then the year after is more of a life science component, where our kids are gonna have a lot more hands-on with caring for a lot of living specimens. This is something we actually pushed out for 2 years because the animal care is quite extensive. So it's a unique program and how it aligns to the 2016 frameworks. But the idea of, if we look at grade 3, where we're using materials in a certain way, and then grade 4, we're using the same materials in a different way. So the opportunity for a student to go back and look at something they previously learned, apply it to something new, and that extends all the way, especially with our new frameworks, K to 12, that our students, you know, over the course of 12 years of science education, they'll be able to go back to something in 3rd and 4th grade and say, hey, I remember this, and they can apply it to a high school curriculum. So it's definitely great changes.
And the science fair is coming up. It's February 7th and is being organized by Teresa Evans. She's very modest back there. She's also one of our co-PTO presidents and an amazing woman, has worked really, really hard on this. And the science fair has been at Center for about 10 years, she thought. And then last year, they had 192 participants, which is really incredible because I believe we have about 453 students. So that's a good amount, and 119 projects that were displayed. I did a presentation that Teresa prepared. I'm gonna give her all the credit. During lunches, and the kids were really excited to see what's been done in the school in the past. I have to say I did make a huge mistake. I referred to Gronk as Tom Brady. There was a picture of him and I got it wrong and I was quickly corrected. So our kids are paying attention. So apparently someone did one of their projects on back injuries and what he could do to prevent getting another injury. So they're very creative and make their projects applicable. Registration forms went out, I believe, last week. They did go out. So we're very excited about that. We're gonna have a lot of different officials. If anyone here wants to sign up to be an official and come out and talk to kids about their projects, we would love that. And here are two scientists from Center. Have you participated in the science fair before?
Yes.
You wanna talk about what you've done or anything else you wanna say about the science fair?
Sure. Also, we wanted to talk about the science fair. We like the science fair a lot. Last year we did a science fair project on maple syrup. It's fascinating to learn about all the projects that the students do, and it helps us learn, plus it's fun to participate.
Are you both going to participate this year?
Yes.
Do you have an idea of what you're doing yet?
I do. I have like a few things, but I haven't.
Do you want to share or do you want it to be a surprise? Do you want to tempt them to come and be an official and see what you're going to do?
Well, I'm going to do baking science.
Will there be samples?
It's against
First the
rules.
maple syrup and now
Yeah,
the,
against the rules.
and we had some pictures too, I think, from previous,
sorry.
science fairs. So this is from last year.
I don't know that I had the Gronk one in here. This was a testimonial about, thoughts.
Yeah. And the picture, actually the picture on the right was from, last week when we were testing, which materials were magnetic or not in Miss Cunningham's class.
So these were some more pictures of kids engaging in the science curriculum. I want to say, to give you an update, that this, when I put our future engineers, you can see our pregnant teacher there, who is actually in labor today. So send good thoughts her way. So we hope we have another little engineer here soon. By the time I get out of the meeting, maybe we'll have found out about that. I wanted to send around too, you can see one of them on the picture before. It says, "My favorite part of science is easily the way it's hands-on. I am so glad that we don't have to read from textbooks for our science block." And these you don't have to return, but these were some that some fourth grade students filled out, and I just think that it's great to hear what they had to say about the new science curriculum. I have to say, walking into classrooms, kids are completely engaged. It's hands-on. They have an opportunity to work in groups, and it's wonderful. We talk about pride a lot in Chelmsford, and I wanted to read a little bit about from what one of our third graders wrote. He said, "I like it because we get to design things like carts, and every time we go back, we get to make it better every time." So they're really persevering and seeing how dedicated to improving their products and seeing how they can make it better. So it's a wonderful, wonderful curriculum. And I'll pass these around too if anyone wants to look at the letters. And thank you guys for listening. And if you have any questions for scientists or us?
I need to have their names for the record, and I didn't quite hear your name, honey. Repeat
Emma
it.
Barber,
Could you spell your first name?
EVA,
Okay, and your last name?
BARBER.
And is it Kate Evans? Or
Yes.
Katie?
Kate.
Okay, with a K.
Yes.
Thank you.
And how, Ms. Evans, would they, if anyone wants to be an official, how do they go about doing that?
Oh, they can just send me an email.
Send an email.
I'll send you guys all an email.
Okay.
And then you can just reply anytime I
You can all do it. Already done?
Oh, right.
Question, if you could change anything about your school, anything, what would it be?
Mostly I think it's a good school.
No changes need to be made at Center School.
I don't think so.
It's perfect just the way it is. Okay, that's what I want to hear.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Great job.
That was my sister's.
Oh, your sister's lesson, I was gonna say, I thought we had to pull you out of your lesson early, so I'm glad we didn't have to do that.
Oh,
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much for coming and sharing tonight. I enjoyed the experiment. I learned quite a lot.
Nobody get hurt.
No one got hurt, so that's half the battle.
Do you want the samples back? The other, the student samples?
Oh, they're just letters that they wrote.
Oh, okay.
I'm really pleased about this because coming from a different era, if your teacher at the time when I was going through those grades wasn't strong in science, you did a lot of social studies and English. And you might, seriously. And so now to have this organization where they're not only exposed, you know, on a regular basis, but in a fairly sophisticated way is tremendous. Again, you have to be commended.
Thank you. Thanks, girls. Great job. Okay, so we've done, so we're gonna jump ahead now, or jump back on the agenda, and we're at item number 5, which is the fiscal 2018 budget report of our second quarter financials. So in your packet this evening, Joanna put together a memo and a cover sheet and our financial report that goes through the end of the second quarter, December 31st. Joanna, do you mind walking us through that a little bit? And then at the very end of the report is, as usual, that grant and revolving fund summary with account balances. So I'll let Joanna discuss this with you.
Thank you. So as Jay mentioned, you have just a two-page memo with some highlights and then a 19-page budget document out of our general ledger system, grouping the expenses in their categories as you approved them in the budget process, and then the grant and revolving fund. So the first favorable variances are on pages 5 through 7, and that's the classroom teachers. And as I highlight, some of the accounts are favorable because when we budgeted, we had a point in time last spring where that's where we landed with the teachers in each of the accounts and the names and their salaries. But as the transfer process happened and as we hired 2 new teachers, that may not have lined up exactly with what we had when you approved the budget in the spring. So if we're favorable, it's when we hired a teacher who came in at a lower step or lane. And when we're unfavorable, it's when most of the time it was a transfer of a teacher with a higher step or lane. So at the end of the day, overall, in the regular classroom teachers were favorable by $210,000. And remember, there's about I don't know, in the 300 to 350 teachers in regular education. And then the next group of teachers are the specialists, so that's special education and ELL and reading. And kind of the same story there with the favorable and unfavorable at an account level. And then just a reminder about the specialist teachers, we did budget an offset for a few of the CHIPS teachers into the CHIPS revolving fund. So we'll make that entry toward the end of the fiscal year. If you go to page 14 and 15, the next category with a variance is psychological services. And as you may recall in the budget, we added psychologists, but we did say that some of it would come, one of the psychologists would come from the school choice revolving fund. So that's why we're unfavorable there a little bit, because the charges are actually going to the local budget. So toward the end of the year, we will make that journal entry to transfer the actuals to the school choice revolving fund. Page 2 of the memo is, you've seen this format before about our special ed tuitions. And this is page 19, the end of the report. This is a recap of the several different areas where special ed tuitions are being funded from. Overall, we expect them to be $7.4 million cash out the door. And then this will be funded through this local tuitions account, the circuit breaker fund, the school choice fund. We're expecting the refund from Valley Collaborative. And so right now, all of the actuals are going to the local budget. So that's why you're seeing us in a negative variance, and that's just so you can see the whole picture of sped tuitions. Right now, we're not at the 7.4 million, we're at 7.161 million. But students can still come in, assignments can still change, so we're not moving off of that number just yet. At the end of the day, after all the transfers are made, we believe the local budget will be fully expended, and we will still have a reserve in the circuit breaker fund of 1.155. The last little chart on page 2 is a reminder about school choice. Currently, the balance is 1.172 million. We're still expecting school choice revenue to come this year. Once we have the offset of special ed tuitions, we expect that balance to be at 988,000, so almost $1 million. That's the recap on the local budget. And then the last printout is the grant and revolving fund summaries. Familiar with? And this is just listing all the balances. Nothing is in deficit. I'll just kind of stop there and see if you have any questions about the local budget or any of the grants and revolving funds.
The blue links in the spreadsheet require further permissions, right?
You have to be actually in Munis,
In Munis.
like on one of our computers to use it. When we produce this report and just download it to a, like a PDF, they just appear blue because they are hyperlinked
Yeah.
if you're actually in Munis. I mean, Joanna's certainly, happy to answer any questions. I am too. I mean, in summary, at this point in the year, we're in very strong, financial shape. I have no concerns over salary accounts. I really have no concerns overall for any non-salary accounts. Our reserves are still solid. We've got $1 million excess projected at the end of the year for circuit breaker reimbursement. That doesn't even take into consideration that little extra money that we're going to try to establish that special ed fund with. We're still working through some of the procedural votes that we'll be taking with that at Springtown meeting this April. School choice is still strong at about $1 million in excess capacity or ability there. That's our other reserve at this point in time. What we'll end up doing is, as Joanna indicated, we have everything hit the local budget so that it's all hitting one fund source, and we don't have it hitting grants and revolving funds and local budget. It's very difficult to track that way. So in June, we'll actually bring forward recommended budget transfers for you to basically move some of these overages from the local budget out to those grant and revolving funds. It'll be one transaction. And what that also allows us to do is to take a look as we get closer to the end of the fiscal year to see if there were any accounts that are going to need transfers, or if we continue to run this pattern, which I anticipate that we will, and we have excess salary capacity within our local budget, then we may not necessarily need to transfer either to circuit breaker for special ed costs or to school choice, some of those funds, and then we can continue to grow some of our reserves. But all in all, because I know this is a lot of information to take in, we're in, again, very, very good financial shape. I have no concerns over salary or non-salary accounts, and everything is proceeding along as planned for the fiscal year.
So that new account would go before town meeting, the warrant article, I assume?
Correct. Yeah, in April. Remember we had a little bit of this talk last fall. I didn't think at the time when we originally talked to Paul that we were gonna require a town meeting vote to set up the fund. And in looking at the new legislation, a town meeting vote is required to, at one time, to set up the fund. And then after the fund is established, we can deposit money into it. And at that point in time, it would just be the Board of Selectmen and the school committee that would need to vote to take the funding, money out of the account. But to set up the account itself and to originally put money into the account, we do need a town meeting vote for that. So we're gonna set up the account one way or the other. We're still trying to figure out, you know, kind of financially for the year, what we should do with the funding. The other technicality with that particular fund is once you take money in and you deposit it into the fund, you're supposed to use the revenue for an upcoming fiscal year, not in the fiscal year in which you actually take the revenue in. So as part of our budget development process, we had a couple $100,000 that was gonna be used in the current fiscal year, and then we were gonna basically bank a couple $100,000 into this reserve fund. Our read of the legislation actually would indicate we would have to take all funding that goes into that account in this year, in 18, and then not be able to access it until 19. So we've got, again, just gotta wait until we get a little bit closer into the spring. Again, we have plenty of money within our accounts to not have to make a transfer right now. We may be able to just take the whole sum and actually put it in the account in 18, because we may not have to tap it until 19 or later anyway. We might be able to maneuver some special education circuit breaker funding to allow that. Or if we have to actually take some of that fund in this year and use it in 18, we might just have to take it as a reimbursement, although I don't like doing that, but take it as a reimbursement to Valley. Not take the funds actually in hand, have them just credit some of our invoices, and take the amount of money that we were gonna put in that special reserve fund, take that in 18, but then know that we're not gonna be able to access it until 19. It's just a lot of, you know, kind of accounting that we have to do for it. But we don't really have to do anything right now until April town meeting, so that gives us another quarter to be able to see where our finances are at.
A little over 500,000.
Yeah, I forget the exact number. It's, Juliana, do you remember
Yeah.
exactly what it was?
It's, 528,
528.
817.
I have a question about summer school, not in a financial way, but a number of years ago, because of all the remediation and so forth, the enrollment in summer school had really dropped. Is it still a viable program?
Yeah, no, actually it isn't, so that we have seen that drop, and we've been trying to make sure that our students were taken care of in Chelmsford, but we're finding that a lot of the students are not necessarily Chelmsford students.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so it's dropped, so we have a plan for an online process for our students to get some credit recovery, and then still be able to graduate
Good.
from Chelmsford and then no longer sustain that program.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, yeah, there's no specific, you're not being asked to make a transfer or anything like that, so there's no specific vote that's necessary. It's really presented more at this point just for informational purposes. And I'll forward a copy of this report off to the Finance Committee. Usually the quarterly reports we send along to them, just so that they can see it. I doubt that they're gonna wanna have us before them, just because they're gonna be starting the budget process within the next month or so. But we'll always make ourselves available if they wanted to have us come in and talk about our finances. But I don't have any concerns at this point in time. Financials, MSBA, yep. So just passing along information to you. About a week or so ago, we did get an email from the MSBA just announcing the new application window. So I just wanted to share these dates with you. Again, there are two different types of applications that you can file a statement of interest for. One is called Accelerated Program Repair, and these are basically kind of larger capital items in an existing building. So if you had a particular school that needed a new roof or windows or a furnace, something like that, you can apply into the Accelerated Repair Program, and that has a different closing deadline than the actual statement of interest for like a new school or a complete renovation project. The date that's going to be more applicable to us is Friday, April 6th, is the date that we'll need to submit a new statement of interest to the MSBA on. We'll need to have school committee and board of selectmen votes prior to that application going in. Again, just wanted to convey those dates to you this evening. No action really being contemplated this evening. What I will do is probably schedule a significant chunk of one of our February meetings to take a look at our capital planning to date, and I think that'll be part of our goal work that we have a discussion on next. And then also be able to take a relook at the statement of interest that we supplied to the MSBA the last time, see if there's any tweaks or amendments we want to make to that. That'll be a document I indicated earlier that internally we'll work on. We won't be hiring a third party to help us with the resubmission. We'll do it ourselves. But I'll share that with you at a February meeting so that we can get that work underway and get the necessary votes taken in March that we need to then submit for the April 6th deadline. So just passing along those dates and the information that came from the MSBA today. Any questions? All right. Next item. We started, this is the fiscal 18, the current school year, school committee and superintendent goals. So we had a discussion at the last meeting, and I did not re-include the report that we did the last time to try to avoid confusion. So you have two documents that are in front of you this evening. The first one that is a white page that looks like this. I'll throw it up on the screen for the viewing audience at home. This is a document that Dennis had prepared that actually takes a look at our current strategic plan on the far left. So this is a lot of the work that's actually taking place in the schools. The middle column shows how, like, my superintendent goals are tied to supporting that document and plan. And then in the third column, looks at how the school committee's goals could, again, support that plan and have everything kind of working in unison. I figured this is something we could actually review this evening and kind of have a little working session on. Linda spent a good amount of time putting together this document that kind of mirrors our district template. And whatever we end up, a lot of it is similar. There are a couple of different items on action steps. But if we worked off of Dennis's document, whatever we kind of agree to or you want to move on, Linda can then basically put in kind of the prettier document that aligns and matches all of our other district documents that are on the website. But this just kind of shows you how the document could be lined up to basically be something that the viewing audience and the public could follow along. So let me get this up and going, and I don't know, if Dennis, if you had any more input?
No, I just wanted to put everything out in one document so we can compare where everything's at. We had questions about, how these things fit together and current goals versus future goals.
While we're waiting for this to come up, I want to commend both Dennis and Linda for the extra work that goes into all of this. It really helps when we come back to have everything put together.
Thanks, Dennis. Nice job. Thank you, Linda.
My pleasure.
Yours looks much nicer than mine, too.
Okay, so now the district has 3 goals. That's why Dennis's document is broken up into 3 different areas. And these would be, kind of our district goals. Then the last 2 pages were some kind of professional practice goals for the school committee that are really kind of in your control to take a look at. But if we started with the school committee goals on the far right on the first one, the first, do you want me to kind of lead the discussion, or do you want to?
Just what I did with this, just the way that superintendent set up his goals was kind of over the course of the 3-year strategic plan. This is the big picture, and then the action item. So I tried to kind of mimic that. So it's changed a little bit from before. So it's kind of a general, over the course of 3 years, we want to get this accomplished, and then just the proposed action items. And I picked one that I thought was feasible within the time that we have in this current year in terms of looking at our different agreements with Middlesex, and what might be involved with that, and what kind of things we would be able to do with that. And then things that we could look at over the course of the next 2 years. If we're going to have this as a 3-year kind of plan, if we can accomplish goal number 1 this year, what are some of the things we can do in the future years. So the one for this year, again, it was just to, in going along with the first objective, the strategic plan is to look at these collaborative agreements with local colleges, community colleges, in terms of what we can do as far as policies are concerned, graduation requirements, which I think is great, that now there's a little bit more flexibility with the electives. I think it's gonna help with programs like that. So I think we're already on the road to doing some things towards this goal. And then you can see some of the other ones in the future, you know, that we could look at.
Now, when it comes to the document itself, we asked that to kind of look like 3 years down the line. So a lot of our larger kind of goal documents will say that. When you get into the action steps, we've only been listing like the current year action steps. So would you be opposed to just listing the current year action step in this particular document, but keeping a running record of some of the other action steps for, like, say, year 2 and 3?
Yeah, I think that's fine, and that's one of the things we discussed, is just, and one of the original documents had some things to look at the future, and we talked about, you know, we don't wanna lose those anywhere, so I just wanna put
Right.
it all, I just basically wanna put everything on one piece of paper.
Right.
So we can, you know, kinda keep track of it,
And there's gonna be some fluidity to the document too, because even on our goals, something that we think might get accomplished in year 1 might, get done quicker, or we can kind of get into an activity for year, 2 sooner, or it might just, when you get into it, take a little bit longer, and you have to, kind of refocus or realign your work to go into year 2. But I think that one, if you end up going with that, I think it well aligns to what we're doing. I think it's, obviously, I think it's a good goal for the committee.
Now, in terms of superintendent goals, you talked a lot about tier 1 practices, so you can just kind of explain that a little bit more. Just in reading them, I think, okay, tier 1 practices and systems.
Right.
Okay, what does that entail?
Yeah, it's the jargon that
Yeah,
we
the jargon of
use
the day.
to educate the students. So when we talk about tier 1, we're talking about the majority of our students, 80% of our students. So what kind of pedagogy are we using? What type of interventions are we using for students that are in that classroom or within that school? When you start talking about the secondary tiers, like tier 2, that student might need additional intervention or more time with an intervention. So if you think of tier 1 as education for everybody, universal design, so that students can access the curriculum, this is what you would do for all students. Some things that might come to mind is, like, we talk about the district accommodation plan, that is called the DCAP. All teachers can access that district accommodation plan and enact those pedagogical pieces in order to educate the students, right? It's not like you have to be on an IEP, there's no special permission. So then after that, if a student still, academically or emotionally is not responding to that, you would add additional tiers of support. So that's when you start getting into tier 2. And when you start hearing tier 3, you're thinking more of some significant supports, perhaps special ed services. So think of it in terms of how involved we're getting to remediate that student.
Do you want to review just your possible future action items to kind of let people
I don't know if people looked
know
at
what you're
them already,
thinking, or?
If they have any comments, any thoughts, any things that they want to add or change or don't think are feasible, and again, just.
Going through this for the next 6 months too will give us an opportunity to
Right.
kind of figure out
Right.
alignment-wise,
Right.
kind of where they'd go, but I think your focus for year 1 is right on. All right, so the second goal is our goal that relates to the MTSS and social emotional learning piece.
Yeah.
And it says, by June 2020, the school committee will work with the superintendent, assistant superintendent, director of student services, and other stakeholders to create a prioritized list of programming that may be implemented to promote the social emotional well-being of students, and that assessment the cultivation of a positive, safe learning environment for students and staff is measured by district budget appropriations. And again, I think this ties to one of our areas of work around looking at the whole kind of therapeutic programming at the elementary level of the district. And this is, again, nice because it kind of ties into like a SMART goal type format, so you can see what progress we've actually made, say, budgeting-wise, to support that goal. And the proposed action item this year falls right in line with what we're doing, but basically having the school committee, work with the superintendent, assistant superintendent, director of student support services to evaluate the need and create therapeutic classrooms at the elementary level to assist students with severe social emotional needs and consider the feasibility of offering and funding such programs in 1819. So I think it's certainly well within what we're doing already. It's a focus of our work, and I think the more that the school committee and the superintendent and the school's work can all be focused towards the plan, I think the better off we are. So, I think that's a good goal. You wanna do the third one?
No, you're doing a good job.
All right, so then the third goal was kind of the goal in our work that related to kind of facilities and making sure that our budgeting is kind of matching up and mirroring our facilities work, so that our budgeting is supporting our different initiatives. But this goal reads, by June of 2020, the school committee will work with the superintendent, school personnel, and town officials to finalize a 10-year capital plan, 10-year capital improvement plan that addresses current and future facility needs, including prioritizing capital needs in current facilities, as well as continuing to pursue new facility options to meet projected future needs, all within the confines of our current fiscal realities. This will be measured by the completion and prioritization of the 10-year capital improvement plan document. And the specific work for this particular year focuses on the school committee and superintendent with other school personnel, establishing a prioritized list of capital improvement needs in all school facilities to be considered in preparation of the 18-19 school budget. One of the things as I'm reading this again that I might recommend, and then this is some of the work we're going to begin in February, kind of finalizing that capital plan and prioritization. The work that we do once that plan is finalized will actually inform the fiscal 20 budget, because we're always like a year off cycle. So even when we submit to the MSBA this spring, you almost have to kind of wait a year to see if you're going to be approved. So I might just suggest that we change the years here to say in consideration and preparation of the 2019, 1920.
Yep.
Yeah, 1920.
So I
If
didn't
you
know
don't
what
mind.
capital requests.
Right, just so that it aligns with that.
Okay.
But again, I think it's something that we're currently working on. I think it makes a lot of sense to have that be a focus of our collective work for the year. Okay with that?
Yeah.
So I gotta make this a little smaller. And then, so those are kind of like three goals that we would be working on together. And then you get into like the professional practice goals of the school committee. So these are goals that, you as a committee would actually be working on. I'd certainly be supporting you, but they really pertain more to your direct work in the district. And Dennis had identified 3 areas here for the committee to work on. But why don't you jump in?
Yeah, no, just said, 3 things to consider going forward in terms of what we do, just in terms of the meeting formats. We've talked about some different alternatives of meeting formats, different alternatives in terms of how we do public comment, when we do it, how we do it. And there's all sorts of options out there in terms of, making it so that people that speak maybe at the beginning have to speak on the agenda items, and then maybe having more of an open, new issue at the end of the meeting. So there are all sorts of different ways of doing it that we can talk about, just so that our meetings can be efficient. So a lot of times we have agendas, and we want to get down to business in terms of that, but we also want to hear from people and hear what they have to say. And a lot of times too, when people have something to say, we can't really say anything back. But if maybe there's a time at the end to bring things up, then we can kind of consider that maybe for the next meeting and have a discussion at that point about those types of things. So just kind of thinking about that and how we set up our agendas. I would like to see us be able to contribute more in terms of the agendas going ahead of time, saying, okay, are there any other items people would like to talk about this week, and we can kind of add those in. So that was the first one, and then communication is obviously something we want to work on across the board with amongst ourselves, obviously, but also with the public and other stakeholders. So a couple of things in that particular area. And then the last one is just what we've talked about before in terms of reviewing policy. I know we're in the process, I think, of having that done, and then where we want to go from there on that, how we want to make it accessible as far as the website, searchability, whether it's something we want to host, somebody else wants to host. Those are things we're already talking about, so I thought it was pretty good to put it in this place. So, just working on our cooperation and our, and how we work.
Very good.
Yeah, okay, great.
Do you like how they tie to like my work as well?
Yes.
If you want to, maybe kind of make a motion to accept these suggestions as your goals for the year. I'll work with Linda. Right, let's be honest. Linda will work and get this incorporated into the document, and then I'll bring back the clean document at the next school committee meeting, and you can formally, kind of vote your goals for the year.
John, how do you feel about that? I thought I heard you say something. Yeah.
No, I just said
Good?
no, I'm really good with it. Actually, it's a thorough amount of work there. So really good work.
All right, good. So if you could help me a little bit more.
You know what, the more I think about it even, as long as conceptually you're okay with this,
Exactly.
then we'll have, we'll work on putting it together into the other format that we typically use, and then you can just vote to approve that format at the next meeting, if that's all right.
So she's.
So you don't have to do anything tonight. No motion this evening, if you're okay with that.
Nice job, Dennis. Thank you again, Dennis.
Very good.
Thank God for Dana.
All right. Sorry, I gotta jump all over the place. Oh, last item on the evening, agenda for me this evening is two travel requests. The first one actually pertains to me. I've been invited to go to Lisbon, Portugal over the April school vacation week with the 10 superintendents from Massachusetts through the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents Group. Portugal as a country in their education department actually has an interest in creating some partnerships with education systems in the United States, and they've selected Massachusetts, I think, because of our really strong educational programs. So they have invited a small group to go over and actually tour some of the schools in Portugal, talk to Portuguese educators, and talk about establishing some partnerships. Might be some opportunities for some of our kids to be able to go over for pieces of the school year and do some work there, for us to take in some of their students, take a look at languages in particular, maybe developing different exchange programs. But I think it's a good opportunity. MASS received a grant through the Portuguese government, basically one of their subsidiaries, to pay for the costs for all the travel, so the hotels and airfare and so there's no cost to the district for that. So I'd like to be able to go on this trip and represent, obviously the Chelmsford Public Schools, but represent superintendents of Massachusetts over the April school vacation week. Because of the way the flights worked with getting the deals for the trip, we actually have to leave late the Wednesday night before, so it's a Wednesday to Wednesday trip. It's not a regular, say, Friday to Friday type trip, but that's just the way that the flights worked overseas. But it's an exciting opportunity. I'm really excited about it and looking forward to it. So I'd like you to support me in going on that endeavor. And then the second trip, our Chelmsford High, you may not know this, our Chelmsford High School track team, a couple weeks ago, that really, really cold weekend we had, was supposed to go up to Dartmouth, New Hampshire for a track meet. We just physically couldn't get buses to be able to, because they're all diesel buses, to be able to bring the kids on the trip. So they were they were great about it, but it was sad that they were able to miss that trip. Dan Hart, the athletic director, was able to work with the coaches, and they found a tournament or a track meet down at Yale this coming weekend. So we'd like to allow the track team to go down as an overnight or a Friday to Saturday. This came in actually just today as a request, but I got it on the agenda so that we could vote to approve them going. I think it's a great opportunity for them. We had a lot of seniors in particular who are going to be competing on this trip, and we're a little bummed out because they couldn't make the last one because of the weather. But the weather looks like it's going to be great this weekend for outdoor work, but even just in travel. So I offer that up as a second trip and recommend your approval on that one as well.
Now, is that just girls?
No, there's a list of the kids. I believe it's boys and girls.
It is.
Is it?
I think there's a list of them on
Boys
page
and girls
3.
track team.
Yep, the names are listed at the second to last page of the agenda.
So Jay, I'd just like to come back to your trip. So you're one of 10 superintendents that was selected to participate in this trip to Lisbon. Jay, how many superintendents are there in the state of Massachusetts? Besides, I don't know,
there's 351 communities, so there's got to be
But there's a
300
lot
plus
of grouping,
superintendents.
right?
Yeah, there's some regionalization, and
There's
there's a
gonna
good
be
number.
over 300.
Yeah.
And how do you get selected for that? What,
A couple things. I mean, MASS had put out an inquiry for superintendents who would be interested in the trip. So we obviously, as a district, although our numbers don't rival, some of the urban communities in the area, we have seen a pretty significant increase in our ELL population. So that was a factor, as districts that are seeing more and more English language learners coming into the communities. The trip interests me in particular. I actually had an opportunity for personal trip a few years back to go to the Azores one summer, and had a great couple weeks over there. Really, it's an incredible culture. I enjoyed the trip a lot. So I've always, kind of had a fondness for Portugal or the Azore Islands in my in me. So when this opportunity came along, reached out to them to kind of find out exactly what they were looking for. I think again, I don't know exactly what it was, but my background, where I do have kind of urban experience as well as now suburban experience, I think was attractive to them. I think, obviously the fact that our ELL numbers are increasing is attractive. I'd be naive to say it wasn't my age, I'm sure played a factor into it also, because as a superintendent, I still have many years to go, and so this will be information I can get and come back, and I'll still be working for the next 10 to 15 years, as opposed to some superintendents who might be nearer to retirement and might not be able to take back as much or kind of sustain things once they're back. So I'm sure it was a combination of those factors.
congratulations, Jay. That's a wonderful.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great opportunity.
Well recognized.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve. Do I have to do them, can I do them in conjunction?
Sure, you can do them together.
I make a motion that we approve Dr. Lang's opportunity to travel to Portugal, Lisbon, on a cultural trip, Executive Director, Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, and I also, part of that motion, allow the track team to go to the Yale Interscholastic Track Classic.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any abstention or negative vote? None, unanimous.
That's all I have.
Okay. Any liaison reports? What other information you'd like to share with the community?
I happened to go to center school the other day, center school PTO, so mimicking a lot of what they said in terms of they were very thankful for all the support they got from everybody, from the teachers, from the administrators, parents, from the students. A couple of events they have coming up. The Taste of Chelmsford is coming up on the 29th of January. I think tickets are still available for that, and was already mentioned, the Science Fair is on February 7th.
How do we stand in terms of parking? Because I went to the science fair last year, and,
It's awful. Parking is awful. You have to get there early.
Oh, at center, it's just,
Yeah.
it's terrible.
It is.
Do we pick up anything? Do we lose anything with the,
They're gonna make improvements to it.
But the improvements aren't even gonna help the science fair, though.
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
there's
I
just-
know.
There's so many cars. No, two positive things happened on the, how we were able to do some parking improvements at Byam
Yeah,
this year?
yeah.
That's been really helpful. The Byam community is really in favor of those. Because we ended up having extra funding in the modular classroom projects. What we're able to do, instead of going to capital to try to get it approved this spring, we went to the capital planning committee, and basically there was some drawings that were already being done for some additional parking spaces, making better use of that island that's out in front of center, and then also at Harrington, the island that's in front of Harrington, being able to redesign that and add some additional parking. So we're able to actually use funding for the modular projects, which again was excess money, but had already been bonded, to do those two parking projects. So that'll be slated to be done later this spring, at the latest early this summer, so that by the time we go back to school in the fall, they'll have parking situation be much better. I want to say off the top of my head, it's still not going to help with, like, say, the science fair. It is, the cars, there's just way too many of them. But like the day-to-day traffic, I think what'll really help on is you'll have less, how they kind of double up cars along the driveways and things. You won't have that as much. I want to say they're picking up somewhere around 30-ish, 35 spots, I believe, from kind of redesigning that island. And then they're also redesigning something out near that, how there's like a shed at Center.
Yes.
Near the field. There's something that they're doing there to gain a couple of extra spaces. So that'll be really helpful. And they're almost doubling the parking on that front island at Harrington, because the way that they're redesigning it, the line of traffic now that kind of parks head in, they're gonna recut it so that you're basically gonna have 2 rows of cars going head in. So that should really be a help there, and that'll free up the cars that are all parking right along the road. So, you know, they'll go out to bid sometime in probably February or March. You know, that could happen as early as after April school vacation week, between then and the end of the school year. I don't know how impactful they'll be to the actual school day, but between now and the summer, those 2 schools will get their new parking. And again, it's all already assumed in the cost of the modular project, so it's not a bonding issue. It doesn't have to go back to town meeting or anything. Gary Persichetti and his crew are already working on that. So that's good news.
I think one of the things that was really noticeable in going to that last year is that it involves 3 generations. I mean, there are a lot of you'd expect a lot of parents, and there were, but there were a lot of grandparents, and the kids take great pleasure in showing off. So the comments that were made earlier, you know, when Center came in, they're very valuable for all the schools. This is Sousa's comments.
Right.
Anything else?
Not a liaison report, but just quickly wanted to ask, so we voted on the calendar for next year and it's all been approved for the dates. So I did want to point out that I looked at the online calendar today, and it's still not posted.
I know that.
Yeah, so do we have a plan to kind of increase the
Yeah.
speed of output for that? Because
So here's the catch.
people had really
I know
reasonable concerns.
I know they have, and it will actually be out tomorrow.
Okay.
On the calendar is fine, the first page, but on the back page, we have the listing of all the major religious holidays, and we just did not want to make an error, because I've made an error in the past on our list. Yeah, that was another Facebook post. So we wanted to try to get that as clean as we can this first time out. So I actually did get the calendar back today. We had sent it out to some people to verify holidays. So it will be on the website tomorrow, and then I'm also gonna send an email to staffy and families, just alerting them. I'll attach the calendar, alerting them to the calendar, the fact that it includes a date going back to school before Labor Day, so we'll get that out tomorrow.
I mean, even without putting out the full calendar, you could put the first day on.
We're gonna be, yes, we could have, but we're gonna be able to get everything out tomorrow in one
Make it
document.
more future facing for next year.
Yeah, well, we're gonna see how this before school works. I mean, I'm hoping, and I really think it's going to work well. If it does, then like some of the feedback we received was, even if you couldn't post, you know, the entire calendar for the next number of years, could you at least put out what the first day of school is gonna be? So that's something that we could do.
Awesome.
But we're gonna take down some of the old calendar so that it's not confused with the new one, but that'll be up tomorrow.
Sure. Thank you.
I have to ask, since it's been really, really cold, how's the heating? Been in all the buildings? Any issues?
No, I mean, for the most part, we had the extreme cold around the first of the year. That first day that we came back, there were a few complaints about cold rooms. Most of the rooms got up to temperature, you know, pretty quickly. I have to say, all in all, people seem to be using the ticketing system if there is a concern around, you know, hot or cold. But I'm not hearing the level of discomfort that people have expressed in the past. You're always going to have some issues, but I'm not even, you know, knock on wood. As soon as we talk about it tonight, something will happen tomorrow.
Sorry.
But I'm not seeing like system failures or things like that. So we actually, given the severely cold
it's been
we've
really
had,
cold, yeah.
I think we're actually doing pretty well. And unfortunately, we're on the eve of another very unpredictable storm for tomorrow. The forecast has changed from 3 to 6 to 4 to 8. A lot of it is timing. My phone died around 4 o'clock this afternoon because I was getting so many calls and texts wanting to know what we were gonna do, so I've already had to recharge. But this will be a call that we have to make in the morning, just because of the way the snow line could move. And, you know, this has been a very disjointed January. I think, you know, staffy and students, it's been tough because, you know, you come back from the holidays and a lot of staff really have big projects we want to get working on, and it's been a little hit or miss. So obviously, you know, safety first, and if we just, the trouble for us tomorrow's storm is going to be the timing. I don't think it's going to be ungodly as far as the accumulation of snow, but if you get 4 or 5 inches and it's all coming during, you know, rush hour, it's just tough. But I just got 3 more texts. So, so we will know, but it will be a morning call. It won't be a call this evening. And, but we'll be up early to make that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just one thing occurred to me, obviously the tremendous problems in Lowell with floods and Durfee High School and so forth. This would be a good time to make sure that it's, that the custodians know where the shut-offs are. You forget about it over time, but.
Yeah, it's, a couple of things. I think the town has actually been very proactive on this, and our custodians have done a great job. A couple of those really, really cold nights, we actually kept the buildings, it's gonna be a little more costly, but we kept the buildings on occupy mode as opposed to unoccupied, just because we didn't want the temps dropping down too much for pipes to freeze. We also brought staff in, and the town brought staff in over the weekends to be able to walk the buildings and see if there were any kind of leaks or pipes that were cracked, to try to be preventative. A couple little things that were found, at least could be taken care of over the weekend. Part of the big issue you have just historically from doing this is, you get a really, really cold day, and that's when the pipe freezes up. You don't know that it's actually split or cracked until, that starts to warm, the next day or a day later. But, we're keeping the heat on a little bit higher than we probably want to, but it's not worth risking, a broken pipe or something like that. And, we are having staff come in the non-work hours to just check the buildings, to walk them, to make sure that if there is an issue, we're on it as quickly as we can.
Very good.
Excellent.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in
Thank you.
favor, aye? Aye. Unanimous.
Thank you.